for Shadow of War, because a lot of people have been asking me as I've been making the LP. From the LP alone, actually, I had, as I was making it, I'm pretty sure I uploaded them in the way with those three. People asked me, what did I think? Do I recommend this game? Much time I ended up putting up into the fucking thing. It was about over 40 hours at least from the playtime, before you actually start up the game. So I put in a lot of fucking time. So we'll start off with gameplay, because at the heart of all games, there's the gameplay. Like if the gameplay isn't good, then people just search up the story for it on YouTube or whatever and watch someone else play it. They won't actually do it themselves. So let's start with that. Okay, so from the first one, Shadow of Mordor, um, the gameplay was actually quite decent, I'd say. Um, but it, to me, went down because they actually made it a lot harder, and the way that they made it harder was simply, it wasn't like, oh, the enemies can do more complex stuff, or there's more moves and shit. It's just like they they do 3 hits of damage to you, so the damage ratio is absurd, and this was on normal. I played on normal. Everything above is just crazy, and the fact that they try and sell you a difficulty, the highest new difficulty is a DLC. It's like, it's a bloody difficulty. Why are you selling me this? When I thought it was bad when they tried to sell you a patch, back in Dark Souls 2 as a DLC. It's like, it's a patch. You should just be giving me this for free. But yeah, they did that. I could go on about the other monetization schemes, but anyway, there's also the stupid grindy system that they put into the game. You can't capture orcs if you're not the same level as them, so you're going to be constantly grinding to get those orcs at the same level as you are, at least. You're going to be trying to always keep on to the same level that you're facing, kind of like in Assassin's Creed, where it's like, oh, you're not level 18 yet, you're 2 levels down, so you get smashed even if you're playing on easy, so, maybe you should level up more. Well, it's usually 3 levels, to be honest. You can pass it too, in Assassin's Creed, but anyway. Then there's the lighthouse thing, which other people have talked about, where in the original, you just climb up the lighthouse, you press the button, and you see a cool little animation of the ring making, like, hammering down on an anvil, like he was actually, making a ring or something. So it was constantly like, it was fitting to the theme, because you always had to get those points, like in Assassin's Creed, to extend your vision over the map and create a fast travel point, right? Well, in this, it's like, you do a stupid thing where you got to look at all the collectibles and zoom in on them, which just consumes times and annoys everyone. And it's annoying because you got to get those fucking checkpoints pretty much. You've got to get quite a few of them. It's one of the things that you mainly gonna have to do. You don't have to get all the collectibles, but it's not entirely like you actually have to, but it's like, it's pretty fucking essential, you know. So there's also the enemy adapting thing. I mean, I like the concept of enemies being able to adapt, so you have to think on the go, like do strategies on how to tackle each enemy, as you go along, you can learn ways to prevent it. But the problem is, when you have an enemy like a shield enemy, where it's like, okay, I've faced them before, I know that the game has told me from the first game, you jump over these ones. It's practically the only way to beat this enemy. You have those enemies where it's like, there's practically only one way to deal with them, unless it's situational, where there's like an ogre that you can take, a Caragor that you can take over, or you can shoot an explosive barrel, which again, because it's situational, it means if there's a situation where you're near those things, you can use them, but if you're not, then you're fucked. So the problem is, if I'm having to jump over these enemies just so I can hurt them, and then they adapt to me jumping over them, then what the fuck am I meant to do? Just hit their shield all day? Am I meant to just be trying to shoot arrows, even though they got a resistance to arrows? Like, explosive barrels aren't always going to fucking be there, you know? And let's say again as well, I'm not high enough level to have the ability to call out one of the caragors or something, which usually captains can just. So that's half irrelevant anyway. It's like, what am I? How am I meant to handle this? Go on to the story. So the story has 4 different acts, right? I was hoping it would only have 3 acts. How the story went, it could have just simply been 3 acts. It would have been sufficient and long enough. They didn't really need to drag out the story. Everyone's complained about that. Anyway, with Act 1, because I would do them in each act segment. Act 1, it was super cliche. As you watch me playing through the LP, you'll see that I'm quite annoyed at how cliche it is. Like, oh look, there's this rebellious young woman who's not really too successful with her powerful father, kind of disgracing the family and all that. But she wants to prove herself to them, so she does some risky things. Her father has to do something risky himself that could end up potentially inflicting more damage than their sons did, and then their sons have to kind of repair it. But instead of their sons repairing it, because you're not playing as them, you have to do it, of course. And then all of that just immediately disappears. Is half irrelevant. The only relevant thing is that the Nazgul are there. And then there's all this stupid spider shit of like, oh, we're gonna make this spider a woman, more interesting, more attractive, sexualize a spider, all this. It's not over sexualized. I mean, it's kind of debatable whether it's sexualized, but to me, it is sexualized. I mean, I don't really do anything too sexual, but it's like, come on. Where you gonna make it a woman, Anyway, then we get into Act 2, Plague of Grives has already talked about that one quite a bit, how the story relied on that one for all the characters, like, oh, here's the goblin, oh, here's Balrog and all that. But to be fair, in a Lord of the Rings game, while it does contradict the story of the actual movies, which I say this is all non-canon, so fucking whatever, we might as well explore it. Anyway, I did like the fact that I finally, in a Lord of the Rings game, got to fight the Balrog. I mean, I don't know all the Lord of the Rings games out there, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that is the first game that you get to fight a Balrog in the game. Like I said, I'm not that stuck to the whatever, so I could be wrong there. But it was nice, and it was nice that it got 2 of them. It's just, maybe the story shouldn't have been so hard focused on it as well, Then there was Act 3, which actually showed me how the story isn't actually as shallow and shitty as I thought. I mean, I guess you could say it was cliche, but I haven't actually seen it too cliche, because it does this great thing of like how the story was so well presented was at the beginning. You saw with the spider, it was less of how to deal with this spider and if there were a problem at all, and more of the relation between Talion and the Ringmaker, and that was been developing throughout the entire story. Is what the story was about, and that seemed quite strong to me. I was super intrigued when they pulled that all together. The fact that Talion, as he was going along, he was getting more resentful of the Ringmaker and his decisions, and they were, you know, unable to come to the same agreement, and they're having moral conflictions with one another. And then they came with the point where, which is choosing the good, is choosing between 2 evils here. Who's the lead? Who's going to be leader? Whether it's going to be Ringmaker or if it's Sauron. Is just having a worse person come over and replace the other, which I wasn't going to talk about on my LP because I felt like that would be too PC and it would be too political of a conversation for me to get into. Which I'm like, well, that's anyway. It was still rather quite interesting, and because like Breaking Bad, for instance, its entire story revolves around each character and how they develop, and how they react to each situation, how each situation affects each individual character and how it makes them develop. And so, character development is quite intriguing, and it is enough to build an entire story around. It's just after they finally brought around and showed you that, all those things connected up together to build on the story. After Act 3, they didn't do anything with that. They didn't go anywhere, and that was the whole plummet. Straight after Act 3, everything went to shit with the Shadow Wars. Now, I was kind of conflicted because before Act 3, the story was absolute shit, and the gameplay was just kind of so. So I would only half recommend the game. Like if you like Lord of the Rings, then yeah, it's still a pretty decent one. But if you wanted to play Lord of the Rings game, I don't know, you could still get it. You can still play it. It's fine. But anyway, the Shadow Wars. Like if you ever decide to get it, you get past Act 3, you might as well just give up and just sell the game and stop playing there. Because it gets extremely grindy. I had to put in like another 20 hours of the fucking game just grinding to get through that bullshit. It was absurd. Did the game. So, as I was saying with the story, you know, they fucked up the Shadow Wars. So, how they ended it, I don't know if you guys watched it, it's a spoiler if you didn't, but if you haven't seen the ending, then how it ends is they just have the two, the Ringmaker and Sauron fuse in the end of Act 3 before Act 4. And then in Act 4, they're just like, oh, that fusion fucking killed him. The issue solved itself. There's no great challenge. Because I thought Act 4 would be like, oh, great, this great friendship that's been going for 2 solid games now has finally broken apart with Act 3, right? Talian's finally been like, okay, you're bad as well, you know, I can't let you lead. So when he fell, when the friendship broke, I thought he was raising an army, so we would end up facing the Ringmaker, and we would have this fight, which would be supported so strongly by the story, and so you'd have a moral confliction as you were having a fight. You know, like I'm just fighting an older friend here, and I don't really want to kill him, but I've got to you know save Mordor and all this crap. But the issue just resolved itself. It was just a cop out. It's just like, you know, just have him kill himself, I guess, and then Talions just takes over, and no real issue or moral dilemma, no real rise, no climax to the situation or anything, no resolution. It's just like the ring threw itself in the fucking lava. It's all done. It's all chill. It's like, fucking what? It's so crap. I was so keen on seeing the story take back itself from Act 3, because that was only really one cutscene that pulled it all together. So if they had an entire act that would be full of good story, that would be able to make the rest of it, you know, like insignificant in comparison to having a full act of good story. Like, like the whole act didn't have any story in it. Every single siege was fucking pointless. But anyway, I looked at the achievements when I played that game. As I got to that, I got the achievement. It popped up. I checked how many people beat it, and there was about less than 5% of all Xbox players who had the game actually beat the fucking game. What does that tell you? That tells you people aren't that keen to pay for loot boxes to skip that fucking 20-hour grind of the game. The game, a single act that's as long as the last 3 fucking acts with no story just to get the ending, which is like 2-3 minutes long and barely explains anything. People would just rather watch it on YouTube, like, and of course they would. If you got a crappy game, that's how people do things. They, instead of spending money, they watch it on YouTube. You know, this is what, going back to what I said about gameplay. If your gameplay is trash, and people just watch it on YouTube instead. And yeah, enough people have said how bad the loot boxes are and how it destroys the game, and it fucking absolutely destroys the game. You know, I mean, that's not talking for all consoles. That's not talking for the PC and the PlayStation 4. But considering that is the entire Xbox crowd, I'd say, you know, the other consoles wouldn't be that far. At most, I'd say maybe like 7% on one of the other consoles actually beat it. Like that's still like fuck all people. And it's honestly good to see to me that people are saying, you know, the loot box system that you're putting into games is fucked. I'm not paying for this. I'd rather sell it, you know. In fact, I would have sold it if I didn't do the fucking LP. I would have just ages ago just fucking given up on the game and just quit out, because fuck that. The grind, like, the obscured grind. Like, there's no story between those sieges, you know? So no, I would absolutely not recommend the game because who the fuck would put in the extra 20 hours to do practically nothing? Yeah, absolutely nothing solved or done. No progress in the story. None. Like, I thought they were going to build up Act 3. I thought the reason why I was worried because it seemed like I just beat the final boss. I was worried that they'd do the thing to, you know, just like, oh, this isn't really a resolution. We're just leaving half done on a cliffhanger because we want to make another game. I thought they were going to do that on me. I thought I already had done the grinding by Act 3, which I didn't think was that bad, so I was actually going to give it a good review originally, which I wasn't actually going to make a separate review video because I didn't think it was like needed, you know, but because it's so bad, it's just like, okay, I'm going to make my own video on this. This is terrible. Plus, enough people aren't watching those. They rather watch my short discussion video or long discussion videos. So it's practically just what I'm looking here. They build the game around the loot boxes. You know, they make the loot boxes first, and then they make the game and they sell half complete. Unbelievable.